in the college ranks?
NCAA, yeah.
Wow. So that was, let's see, the 85, 86.
83.
Was it 83 for 3?
Mm-hmm.
Was it in the ACC then, right?
It was in Southern.
Southern Conference.
Mm-hmm.
So, because then they didn't adopt it to the NCAA till like 85.
Right. So Southern and
But some in the ACC had it for a year.
and Southern and the Big Ten were laid it out for them to do it in '83, and it is strange. Southern Conference changed the game. It was at Western Carolina. Changed the game to 6 o'clock to start before Michigan started at 7, so they get the first one.
Good deal. Well, Mac, first of all, I do appreciate your time, and first of all, just a little bit of your military background. Talk about that.
Well, it started at William Fleming High School. The very first class of ROTC, the junior ROTC, was at William Fleming High School. And entering that, I got the feel that I wanted to continue on. And I loved to watch space shots. I wanted to be the very first black astronaut. So I did get an appointment to the U.S. Air Force Academy. I went through the prep school and I got in, and they accidentally left me on active duty. And I knew that in order to be an astronaut, I would have to be a fighter pilot or a test pilot, and I figured I'd have to go to Vietnam, which would have been okay with me. And that was just prior to the big stink about Vietnam, and it was all right. I got there and I started to work on it. Now, they had me in a program in which I would be a fighter pilot, but I couldn't pass math. I couldn't pass math. I just had issues with math, and I got to leave. Now, I was on schedule to go to flight training and then go over to Vietnam, but not passing math, I didn't get that opportunity. I had a couple of friends that did go. I had a couple that didn't come back. But at the time, it didn't matter because my ultimate goal was to be an astronaut. And when that happened, they were going to send me to a tech school to do something else. But at that time, my time was almost up. I would have to re-up in order to do that. So I got out, and then led to the sports career.
So you were active in the Air Force for 2 years.
Yes.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
How did that time impact you to made you the person you overall became?
It taught me a lot. I loved the Air Force Academy. I loved going there. I loved the regiment that was there. And I knew some people couldn't handle it, but I felt that I could. Mathematically, you had to major or minor in math and engineering back then. And I took math, and it just didn't work. But what it did was it made me more structured. Anybody that ever works with me in a group or anything knows that I'm point blank structured, and that's what it made me. I'm very technically sound when it comes to any leadership role, and that it was the Air Force Academy that got me that way. And I know a lot of people get ticked off at me because I'm that way, but it made me that way, and it probably was the best thing for me. I mean, when I got into officiating, I had this habit. I didn't talk to coaches. I look at coaches today. I shake my head on the sidelines when I watch the coaches all up and down the sidelines, on the floor, patting the officials on the butt, that kind of thing. I didn't talk to coaches. I talked to the point guard and the captain. Those are the only two people I talk with, and you know that. I think it came from the military background.
Now, before we get into your officiating, obviously in the 60s, you were part of integration of the schools here in Roanoke. You know, just talk about that time and just, you know, how did all that really come about when you really were a part of that?
It was. We were the second class of students to integrate Roanoke City Schools. There were 3 at the Monroe Junior High, and at the time, we integrated. Roanoke City Schools was integrated in 1960. The next year we integrated Roanoke, there were 7 of us that integrated the middle school, or at that time junior high school, Monroe Junior High. And we had to take a test to be allowed to go to that school. Of course, we didn't know why at the time. We were so young. Our parents understood. We didn't understand. And I to this day, cannot understand why it had to be a test. But there were 7 of us that took the test. And as we all graduated from William Fleming, they called us the Magnificent Seven. But it did. And then when I got to William Fleming High School, it was strange because there were more students, obviously, so we were more separated than we were at Monroe. I felt, from the athletic standpoint, shut out. I wasn't the greatest football player, and I wasn't the greatest basketball player, but I was a pretty good baseball player, and I got cut from the William Fleming baseball team, and trying to be the first black player on the team ever, and I got cut. And at the time, I was playing out in the Highlands with Roanoke Dodgers. I was playing with men, but I couldn't make the high school baseball team. I mean, I knew something was up. And I went on to play at the Air Force, and it really made me angry with the school system, made me angry with Roanoke City, made me angry with people that used to be my friends. I was angry when I went to Air Force and realized I could play baseball there, but I couldn't play in high school. And the other thing I realized was that I was a slow developer. And so it took that 1-2 years before I was able to get to where I felt that I could perform at a decent level. I played the 3 sports at the Air Force just so I could stay on a training table and wouldn't have to go through inspection. So I started in baseball. I didn't start in football, basketball, but I did play.
And the neat thing about that, obviously you have a passion for sports, a love for sports, which kind of carries over to officiating. Talk about, how did you get involved with officiating? When did you really start going into officiating?
I got involved when I first left the Air Force, and I came back and I went to Virginia Tech to finish my degree. And I would play baseball, and I got thrown out of a game, and they made me officiate softball games at Tech just to make me understand exactly what I wasn't supposed to do. And I liked it. And I got to the point my senior year of college, I would ride down the mountain with a chest protector on my back and a mask over my helmet on a motorcycle, with a mask over my helmet and shin guards on. I'd ride down fully clothed, ready to jump off the motorcycle and officiate Little League baseball and everything. And I realized that I was probably pretty good at it. So I applied for an umpire school in Florida and got in. Harry Wendelstedt's, it was Al Summers then, and Wendelstedt bought it. But his school in Daytona Beach, nice vacation, and there were 153 of us at the school, and 14 of us got jobs, and I got the 14th job. And I started out in Gulf Coast League, had rented a nice place on a bay, and it was really nice, wonderful. And 2 weeks later, they moved me up to the Carolina League and said it was a promotion. but I enjoyed it. I spent 2.5 years here in the Carolina League, 2 years in the Eastern League, 3/4 of a year in the International League in AAA, and partial last part of '78 in the American League.
So so you started officiating. When was the year you started officiating? '73. Was '73, and then you basically did baseball officiating from '73 to '78.
Yes, sir.
And you made it all the way up to the MLB, the American League. Yeah,
I tore my knees up at a pickup basketball game at the Y. And from that time on, I really couldn't run or squat that much. I used to be pretty fast, and then it slowed me down. I couldn't squat, so I couldn't go back into baseball. I mean, I had to retire. I was 29 years old. And in the interim, I was in off season. I taught school, and I worked college basketball, and had a nice tenure in college basketball. And really enjoyed that, and worked several conferences, and that was fun. But my love was baseball. I loved it. If you don't mind, the 2 greatest moments of my baseball career that I loved both had to deal with Jackie Robinson. In 1977, it was the 30th anniversary of Jackie Robinson signing a pro contract, and his first game was with Montreal and Jersey City. And so we had the game in Jersey City, and they flew in Rachel Robinson, his widow, and it was a great thing to have that game. And I really enjoyed meeting her and talking with her. She gave me a big hug. She was, it was really nice. The other one was in '78 at Richmond, and to honor his first year in major leagues, in which he won Rookie of the Year in '48. So 30 years later, they had the game in Richmond, and it just so happened it was the first time ever that two black managers and a black umpire were on the field at the same time. And the black managers were Frank Robinson and Tommy Aaron. And so, that was a big thing for me. I really had a wonderful time there.
Now, basketball officiating, what conferences did you officiate, and what was the year range from the time you started basketball officiating to the end?
Well, I started in high school basketball in '71, to be honest with you, '71. And then I got into ODAC, which was nice, and thank you, Dan Wooldridge. I got into, I didn't even want to drop the names, but thank you, Dan Wooldridge. And got into ODAC and the Southern Conference. And I think the biggest mentor I had was the commissioner of the Southern Conference, Dallas Shirley. He's the one that signed me to that game in '83, in which I was able to give the first three-point signal ever in a regular basketball game in collegiate basketball history. But Southern Conference did work a little ACC, but mostly it was the Southern, Colonial, and ODAC. I did have a Sweet 16. I mean, it was really nice.
Oh, so you were in the Sweet 16?
Yeah, I had a Sweet 16.
How about that? What was because obviously they only take the best officials once you get into the NCAA tournament. How big was it? How fired up was when you got an opportunity to officiate an NCAA tournament game and then make it all the way to the Sweet 16?
I thought that it was, to me, it was, I felt as if I deserved it. I felt as if it was the great thing to happen to me since I wasn't able to continue in baseball. I just felt that technically I felt I was as good an official in my mechanics as anybody that ever walked the face of this earth. I just felt I was that good, and anybody that ever saw me officiate would tell you that, they would mirror my mechanics. There are officials today who tell me that. There are officials that tell me, gosh, you're my mentor. I saw you work, and I just love your mechanics. And it was a big thing for me. It validated that I was a good official. I got there without having to be the best of, or to compete with anybody. I didn't have to go to camps or anything like that. We didn't have to do that then. And I felt that the nomination was good from a commissioner of the Southern Conference, and it worked out for me.
So you did basketball officiating. What was the last year you officiated a basketball game?
1990.
So you had nearly a 20-year basketball officiating career.
Close to it, yes, sir.
Wow.
But it was 7 years I was out with the knee injury, so it was 13 years maybe.
13 years, but then that little window of time. And then now, you do the basketball, you did the baseball. So another sport that begins with a B, boxing.
Yeah.
Now, how did you get involved? Like, when did you start boxing officiating? How did you get in that? And then just share a bunch of stories about that, because I know you probably have a bunch of them.
I was 59 years old when I got involved with boxing, and it happened because I was here in Roanoke, and I'd happened to have helped a few of the clubs get started, and I never have boxed. I did at the Air Force, but I mean, I got knocked through the ropes. That was another story. But I got into I was going to the Golden Gloves, the state Golden Gloves Championship were being held in Roanoke, and I knew who that it would be wonderful. I went to watch it. I was sitting in the stands. The guy comes over and says, "Excuse me, sir," he says, "somebody said that you would like to officiate this," and it was the chief of officials for Virginia for Golden Gloves. And I went, "I've never, no, I've never done this before." He says, "We are short of officials. We need a judge." I says, "Well, but I'm not trained." He says, "Come with me, we'll do it." So they gave me about a 20-minute study time, and I took a test, passed it. And so my very first time was judging the state Golden Gloves Championship in Roanoke. In 2 or 3 months, they put me in the ring as a referee. And I started doing that. And now, anyway, this was 2010, and 2009. And within 3 years, I had gotten quite a reputation as a referee, and that's because I didn't know anybody. There's very little boxing that goes on here in this part of the state. So when I had to go to officiate amateur, I'd have to go to Norfolk, Richmond, Washington, the Northern Virginia, and I would go to Tennessee. There was nothing around here. So really nobody knew me. So nobody was going to gripe at me that much because they didn't know who I was. And so it worked out fine. Within 3 years, I was chief of officials in Virginia. And the next year, 2013, I became chief of officials for collegiate boxing, in which I still am. And I travel, up until this year, I was in the ring everywhere I went. But now I travel and supervise. This is my first year out of the ring as a referee.
Now, I got to ask you this. I mean, obviously, each of these sports are different. Baseball officiating, basketball officiating, and boxing officiating. If you could talk to some of the nuances of each sport when it comes to officiating, because obviously in basketball, you're looking for a lot of things, fouls, contact, and all that. Baseball, it's pretty much you're behind the plate, balls and strikes. Is a player safe or out? And boxing, you're just, I guess you're trying to keep the peace, but if you could just talk about each of those nuances of officiating each of those sports.
Baseball is to me, the most precise. And that's because, you don't have the chance of letting something go. Baseball is the most precise because everybody's watching that particular play or watching that pitch or watching that at bat by the batter. And so you've really got to be as precise as possible because everybody sees that. So I thought of all that, somebody says, well, being behind the plate must be difficult. Being behind the plate is the easiest job up until they had the K zone where they put the square up in and everybody can see it. Because at the time, nobody would gripe about the 1 or 2 pitches you missed, or maybe 10 that you missed. But they will gripe about that one play you blew at first base. That's my, really you had more ejections because of the base calls than you did the plate calls. And so that was fine. But I think it was the most precise. And I enjoyed it more because you were involved, especially if you're in the plate, with everything that happened. And understanding that. And I think too, being able to negotiate with coaches, with managers and players, that I think was a strong suit for me. I had times where a guy started running out on the field, and if I really blew it, I would just tell him I blew it. What's he going to do? He just turned around and go back in the dugout. I mean, what can he say? I mean, generally it's when you don't admit it, or when there is really a big disagreement, you have it out. Basketball, I think the problem with a lot of officials is they're looking for something. We have a lot of officials who are looking for fouls and looking for those things instead of letting it happen. And there are times in basketball where you can delay the whistle. There are times when a guy goes, they might get hit on the arm, but the ball goes in the hole, let it go. Being able to delay the whistle. The nuances of basketball is let the game come to you. You don't go looking for something. If you go looking for something in baseball, you're going to have phantom calls. You're going to have inadvertent whistles. You're going to have all that kind of thing happen. So that is, it's almost like football. In football, you got a holding penalty, the play where it's way away from the play and it has nothing to do with the play. Most officials are going to let that go. Same thing with basketball. I mean, if there's something way out of the way, because most people are concentrating on what's happening with the ball. And the good thing about basketball is you could talk to them. I used to talk to players underneath, or if I didn't want to call 3 seconds, 4, I just start talking 4, 5, 6. They get down, they'd understand. I got to get out of here. So I try to talk players out of doing some things which would have me to blow the whistle.
That's something. So basically, you've officiated sports. Basically, if I do my math right, over the span from 71 to even this year, right? Mm-hmm. So in the span of roughly 50 years, you've officiated a sport, or in other words, basketball, baseball, boxing, whatever, in some capacity.
In the highest level you could get in those particular sports. I mean, you know, the championships, the national championships for boxing. You know, and boxing. Boxing is more position than it is anything else, and letting things go more than anything else. I mean, and there's a difference between pro. I do pro in 2 states, and I do amateur all over the world. And I can tell you that pro, you know, it's got to be really bad before you call something, before you stop the action. In amateur, you talk them out of it. Stop holding. Blue, stop holding. Red corner, stop holding. You know. Or you might go over and slap the hand off of them. I mean, I told you to stop holding. You know, you try to talk them out of it so you can let the action go, because amateur is only 3 rounds. I mean, you stop the action so much, it's hard for the judges to make a decision on it.
And then, obviously, in boxing, you've met some big time characters.
Yeah.
Was there one of them out of the stars that kind of stood out to you that's very memorable to you?
Tyson. Mike Tyson has become a friend, believe it or not. He's become a friend of mine, and I started after he stopped. So I mean, I've never officiated it, but I mean, I've been around him quite a bit, and what I found was that people have this. One time, I tried to bring Mike Tyson into Roanoke Valley Sports Club, and I was on the board of the sports club at the time, and they didn't want him here because of, you know, the image he would create or had created. What you find out about Mike Tyson is, once you get to know him, nicest guy you ever want to meet. But, you know, it takes a while to get to know Mike Tyson, you know, and if he thinks he's very savvy in trying to pick up on people trying to get with him for certain things. But he's become a friend, and I think he was probably the most memorable character. Sweet Pea Whitaker, another one who Virginian who I became friends with even up to the point he passed away, but just a nice guy, and one thing about Sweet Pea, he was at amateur events with kids in Norfolk area. Every time there was an event there, Sweet Pea was there, and supporting those kids in that event, and just a community, the boxing community legend in that area. Not so much for what he did out in the ring, but what he had done outside the ring in terms of his support for those kids getting involved in amateur boxing.
So at this point right now, I mean, you are the voice of the William Fleming Colonels in football and basketball.
For basketball, I do the clock.
Do the clock football, but basketball. So when did you get involved with being on the PA of William Fleming games? Or how did you get involved with that, and when did you get involved?
I don't know. It's been, I think, 10 years. 10 years. And it's different from the people they'd had announcing before, because I'm more neutral than most other folks, and the visitors appreciate that. I've had visitors come and says, "Thank you so much for not being a homer on all this." And I think, you know, if you were being paid to be broadcasting, that'd be something different. But as an announcer, I mean, you know, people can see what's going on, and just as an announcer, you know, I'm good for explaining, because a lot of things happen during a game, and they don't get it. So I mean, I'll explain it. Same thing with officials. They come over to the table, and I'll tell them, God, you know, if I were you. But I think that it's 10 years, and I cannot remember how I got started. I do believe that I was asked to do a game by the AD at the time, and I did it, and then I got asked again and again, and so then the next year it was just an automatic call. But I don't remember how it happened. But I'm happy I'm there. I love the Colonels. I love the coaches have been super. They care so much about the kids. Every year, most of them say, I'm quitting, and I'm done with it, and they're back the next year. But I think it's because of the love of those kids, and they've done a wonderful job with them.
Now, I got to ask you, I know the music you picked. Is it kind of funny, someone come to you and say, okay, what's this song? Because you play a lot of oldies but goodies. I mean, you play some new songs, but for the most part, your songs are kind of back in the day songs. I mean, do the coaches, players, they look at it like, what's these songs or anything like that?
Players and students are not happy with it. And my take on it is that, who's paying to get in the game? You guys aren't. It's your parents, your grandparents. I'm playing it for them. But during warm-ups, up until this year, during the warm-ups, I would play what it is they wanted. But during timeouts, halftime, stuff like that, I'd play what I wanted, what I think Grandma would want to hear. And this year they made a change. They bought a program, and so I can't play my music anymore. So I had to play what's on the program, and I'm, that's okay. But I think I'm looking over Grandma, and Grandma ain't shaking like she was in the stands before. So this year it's different.
And then obviously, and we don't have to go deep in detail, but obviously you were on the city council for a short amount of time. And I guess the biggest thing I got to ask you, service, giving back to the community. I mean, you did that through the city council, but you're also doing it now through your alma mater and various other things. Just an overall question, what is it like to just give back of your time and to give back to the community and through various things that you do?
I learned most of that from my mother, who did it, oh gosh, for 50 years herself. But it feels good. I mean, I always say to kids and folks, it's not all about money sometimes. Sometimes just an attaboy will do it for you. And I like the attaboys. And I don't do it for me. I mean, you ask me to do something and that's involved in the community, and more than likely I'm going to say yes after I ask my wife. But I think that like the city council, that was something that I enjoyed, and I didn't run for re-election at the time because I thought I was going to be transferred with my job, and it happened that it didn't go. I did get moved, but not at the time I thought it was. And so, but I enjoyed the time there. I wish that things were different. I wish there were no party identifications in Roanoke City. I think that our city would actually move along a lot better if it weren't. We've got some issues that I think that I would love to have been tackled myself. When I was on council, I was known as the sports councilman because I had some ideas, and one day I'm going to tell you about one that really, if it had gone through, would have been big.
Guess we'll save that for off-camera conversation.
Yeah.
When people say your name, and obviously you have had a history and a legacy in this community, what do you hope, or what would you hope the Delvis Mccadden legacy would be here in the community?
I would say that I would like to say that he cared, and that he loved Roanoke, and he cared. And I know that a lot of folks think I really cut folks up a little bit and things like that. I'm very direct, but I do love and care for this community. It's the legacy I want is that he cared. You don't have to like me. Just understand that I do care about the situation. I may not. I says, it's like I say to others all the time, you don't have to agree with me. And nothing ever changes unless somebody thinks differently than you do. But you can't change things unless you understand the other side. You don't have to like the other side. You know, I understand the other side, and people don't like the way I think sometimes because I don't think like they do. But that's okay. I mean, at least I understand you, and I understand the other side, so I can make give you a pretty good understanding of where I'm coming from, just because I do have the understanding of both sides of an issue. But I think I want people to know I cared.
Well, I tell you what, I appreciate you giving me time. Is there anything else you want to say or add?
I'm going to tell you what, I love this station. I listen to it in the morning before I go to work for golf money. And I listen to you on Friday, watch you on Friday nights. I get home like tonight, I'll be getting home and you've got a preview of tomorrow's games. I'm going to get there and see that. But I think that WFXR has done so much good for this community, and I appreciate the station. And this is not just because you're paying me big money to be here. It's because I really feel that, and you've really come a long way with that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Mac. It's also a blessing. Always great to see you, and thanks for giving me time this afternoon.
Thank you so much, May.
Oh.